Y'all come on, call on him, call on him, call on him. Call on him this morning, call on him. If you want him to talk, you got to call on him. Call on him this morning. Yeah, call on him. Oh, you can call on him this morning, call on him. But submission and obedience. We have the calendars out in the front, so when you come into the front of the church, you can go ahead and pick those calendars up.
For the word. Right. Paul says, I hear that there are divisions among you. I hear that there are divisions among you, that there's not a sense of unity, but there is a sense of brokenness among you. He said, and in part, I believe. For there must be factions among you, that those who are approved may be recognized by you. Therefore, when you come together in one place, Paul said it is not to eat the Lord's Supper, for in eating each one takes his own supper ahead of others, and one is hungry and the other is drunk. Paul said, look at that behavior. He says, what? That means, what exclamation point means, that's unbelievable. What? That's nonsense. What? I can hardly comprehend that is happening in the church. Then he says, do you not have houses to eat in, or do you despise? That's what Paul said. Do you despise the church of God and shame those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you for this? I do not praise you. And in addition to the problems of immorality and the defamation of the Lord's Supper, there was issue of worship. Now you can read this at a later time in more detail, but it happened in 1 Corinthians 14:26 to 33. Paul addresses envy and jealousy, disorder, and confusion in the worship service. In a nutshell, some in the worship service were acting as though worship was a place for them to showcase their gifts and their talents. That's what he's saying. It's a place for you to showcase your tongue, and showcase your prophecy, and showcase the gifts that you have. You see, everybody felt at liberty to do his or her own thing. That's what he's saying. The result was chaos and utter confusion. So Paul writes in verse 33, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. Amen. Then again in verse 40 he writes, let all things be done decently and in order. So what he's saying is that you are not doing things decently and in order, and that there's so much confusion going on that nobody knows what's happening. See, I just mentioned now our Wednesday evening Bible study prayer meeting is changing from 7 to 6. And the ministry leaders, and I met with ministry leaders, and the reason is we're trying to get people, children home earlier so that they can get ready for school, get prepared. Some of our children were not getting home until about 9:30. So we're trying to get them home. We're trying to get people home earlier who work, faithful members members who come out almost every Wednesday night, and yet they have to go home, get ready for work. And so the pastoral staff, as well as myself, don't subscribe to the nonsense. We do to be done at 8:30, but when 8:30 comes, we go to talking about, well, you know, the Spirit is leading. You know, so we're going to go further. We're going to go on and on and on. No, the Spirit says do things decently and in order. There ought not be a whole lot of confusion going on. So Paul said in his warning, I'm coming in the power of Jesus Christ, whom some say was weak because he allowed men to abuse him and crucify him. Paul says, but today Jesus Christ lives by the power of God. So I'm coming in his power, in the resurrection power, the power of God. Let everybody know that it's time for the disciplinary hand of God to fall upon the false teachers, the critics, and the sinners in the church who refuse to change their ways. Paul is saying, I'm going to do my part, but God's going to do his part.
Amen. That's right. That's right.
Now the third warning, which touches on our spiritual discipline for the month, third warning from Paul was that believers needed to examine themselves. Paul wrote in verse 5 to the church, examine yourselves as to whether you are in the faith. Now, isn't that something for him to say to Christians? Paul said, examine yourselves as to whether or not you are in the faith. Verse 5 challenged the Corinthian churchgoers to check themselves in order to ensure that the profession of their faith made in Jesus Christ, as well as their relationship with him, was genuine, authentic, truthful, real, and legitimate. Paul says, check yourself to make sure that what you have in God is genuine, it's not game playing, it's not fakery, it's real. That's what he's saying. Paul goes on in verse 5 to say, test yourself. Test yourself. I love that about, I mean, as I look back on it, in school, you know, we had those tests. And Mr. K. Patterson used to walk in our 8th grade class, and he would say to us in his humorous way, clear your desks for the tests. Clear your desks for the tests. Now, those who were prepared for the tests felt all right. But those who have been shucking and jiving and playing around all week long went in the shock. I'm testifying, that was me. I went in the shock more times than not. But Mr. Patterson's tests were designed not only for him to see, but for us as students to see whether or not we were grasping the material. Yeah, I'm sitting up in 8th grade. I ought to be able to do this stuff. Right? After all, I'm going to 9th grade. Hopefully. Prayerfully. I'm going to 9th grade. So I got to know this stuff. Well, Paul says in verse 5, test yourself. That means examine yourself. To see if your words and your walk substantiate your claim. That's like Mr. Patterson's test. You know, I can say, I know I got it down, but the test will show not only me, but it will show the outside world just where I really stand with God. So he's saying, test yourself. That means examine yourself, check yourself to see if your word and your walk substantiates your claim. Now, here's the practical application. Here's the downloadable app if anybody wants it. Here it is, y'all. Honest. I'm talking about fakery now. I'm talking about honest. Honest self-examination of my attitude and actions, principles and practices, companions, company, and correspondence, resources, and responsibilities will let me know and will let you know as you examine yourself where we really stand with Jesus. Yeah, now if we taking an honest inventory,
All right.
our attitude, you know, what am I thinking about? What am I thinking on? My action, what am I doing with my time, even when I'm by myself? My principles and my practices. What do I stand for? Do I stand for righteousness? What kind of practices am I participating in? My company, who am I hanging around?
Right, Lord.
Who am I hanging around? I mean, it's all right for me if I'm, walking through those spots I used to with tracts in my hand, talking about trying to win people to Jesus. It's a whole different story if I'm walking through the place with a cup in my hand.
All right.
Can I get a witness here? Listen, my company and my correspondence. Listen, what am I writing? What am I putting out on Facebook? What does my Facebook page look like? If I had one, what would it look like? What would I be putting out there? What am I texting? What am I tweeting?
All right.
My resources. How am I spending my resources? Am I supporting the work of ministry? What about my responsibility? Now, my responsibility says a whole lot about my relationship to Jesus. If I'm scheduled to preach, and my wife loves to talk to me about this, am I prepared? Does the congregation know that I'm prepared? Do I care enough about my responsibilities at the church to improve myself, to get better at what I do, or do I just come here and stumble through? Responsibility. Am I where I'm supposed to be when I say I'm supposed to be there?
Amen.
Responsibility. See, all that would let us know where we really stand with Jesus. In other words, Paul says we need to check ourselves, test ourselves. Paul says we need to scrutinize ourselves. Did you get that? Scrutinize ourselves so that we won't scam ourselves into thinking we are something that we are not. It's one thing to deceive other folk. It's worse. Self-deception is worse. Case in point, y'all. Case in point. Watch this. If the man in 1 Corinthians 5:1 thought for 1 minute that he could be right with Jesus and at the same time help himself to his father's wife. Y'all, let me say it like this. Let me say it like this. If the man in 1 Corinthians 5:1 thought for 1 minute that he could be right with God, that his life was spirit-filled, that he had a genuine relationship with Jesus, and at the same time sleep with his father's wife. And as I pondered this thing in my mind, y'all, it's bad enough. I just wanted to say it had to be a stepmother. It just had to be. It just had to be. Now I don't let everything out that I think when I prepare a sermon. Because I was taught in the seminary that some things are for the classroom and are for your own private study and not for the pulpit. But that just had to come out, y'all. If he thought 1 minute that he was right with Jesus and at the same time could sleep and help himself to his father's wife, he was scamming himself. But if the group in 1 Corinthians 11:17-22 thought that they could be cliquish, hanging out with the high class folk, the folk